So being able to provide good security is one of the most important skills you can have as an A+ certified professional. In order to keep up with the pace, you will have to keep up with the new changes in security requirements. Many of these are pushed through upgrades to systems such as new iOS downloads on an Apple iPhone, or security patches through Windows operating systems, or upgrades from your virus software such as McAfee or Norton. There are so many facets to information security. These include business continuity and disaster recovery planning, application development, access control, governance and risk management, operations security, physical security, and network security. Each of these has a subset of requirements and management needs. Let's begin our discussion with the three types of hackers. You have white hat, black hat, and gray hat hackers. All of them perform a number of different types of attacks to actually break into a network or an operating system. Some of this may occur instantaneously as they attack, or they may just lay the groundwork for a future type of attack. White hats are fairly good guys. They do things in a legitimate manner and try to hack or break into software or hardware to understand how to protect the environment from the black hat hackers. These are actually good guys when it comes to computer hackers. Black hat hackers actually break into the system or networks for malicious reasons or their own personal gain. This may be just for sheer joy or bragging rights or financial gain. So black hat hackers are the bad guys. Gray hat hackers are generally security professionals who are trying to exploit systems to determine their weakness for system owners. There's no malicious intent by a gray hat hacker, so each of these performs a different function. Some are good, some are bad. Let's talk about some of the different types of attacks. There are too many to mention in this introduction to security fundamentals, but we'll cover the basics. Let's begin with the denial of service. In a denial of service attack, an attack is used to create the system to be so busy that it can't perform a service or provide a real request to a client. This actually overloads the system and it shuts down. For example, you might have an email server that a hacker attacks and it floods the server with email. Then it's so busy it can't send anyone messages like it normally would or it should normally function. An eavesdropping attack occurs when a hacker uses some type of a packet sniffer to see traffic on a network. A packet sniffer is used to find out login passwords or to monitor activities. The social engineering attack is when a hacker uses social media or social contacts to hack into a system. Generally, the hacker poses as someone and tries to trick the user into giving them information. There are three basic types of social engineering attacks. When a hacker impersonates an IT administrator, they may contact the user and trick them into giving up their password or resetting the password. When a hacker impersonates a user, they may contact the network administrator and pretend to be locked out and then ask the administrator to reset the password for them. And finally, when a hacker attacks through an email program, a hacker may pretend to be an administrator sending an email to workers and then asking them to do something simple like upgrade a system by clicking on a link in an email. There's actually an exec file loaded in there that contains malware or some type of attack. So make sure you educate your customers never to run a program or click a link that's been emailed to them unless they're 100% sure that they knew who it came from. We'll talk about a couple others on this other upcoming slide, but I wanted to mention spoofing as well. Spoofing is where an attacker alters a network or an IP address to make it look like a request came from someone other than the hacker. In a man-in-the-middle attack, a hacker monitors network traffic and intercepts data. The modified data is then sent out with the modified result. The person on the other end never knows the data was intercepted or altered in its transit. To protect against this, you should restrict access to your network and implement encryption and authentication services. A buffer overflow attacks when a hacker sends more data to a piece of software than the software really expects. This information is usually sent in a buffer form of memory. When this information exceeds the allocated amount that the code is able to run, the code executes in the account associated with the user, and it can often be in a system administrator account. So it really causes an overflow of information in the system. An SQL attack or SQL attack occurs when statements that manipulate a database are sent to the database and executed. If the data isn't validated, then a hacker can modify or even delete data. This is a common way to manipulate an operating system. Session hijacking occurs when a hijacker hijacks a computer session and then impersonates one of the parties. The other party has no idea that they are working with a hacker. This is similar to the man-in-the-middle attack, where a hacker intercepts data and alternates. There are a lot of other forms of attacks hackers can use, but these are the most common for the A+ certification exam. Let's talk about malware, which is actually a malicious type of software. It does harm to systems such as virus or spyware. Malware can come from several different forms. The most common forms are listed on this slide here. We've got about 5 common forms that we use. Beginning with viruses. Viruses are programs that can harm your system and spread throughout emails or attachments such as a word processing document or a spreadsheet. Viruses can delete files, modify system configuration, or even email all of the contacts in your email collection. In order to prevent viruses, you need to make sure that you've got virus software installed and ensure that your clients and customers never open any kind of files or attachments in their email box unless they're expecting them or know who they're sent from. Logic bombs are malicious software that are designed to activate on a certain date and time. They act normally until that specific day occurs that the programmer decides for the software to become malicious. Worm viruses are self-replicating and infect from system to system. To protect against worm viruses, you need to use a firewall or load a firewall on your system in the form of software or hardware to prevent someone from entering your system. Then ransomware is one of those types of malware you hear about. Sometimes it's in the news where a pop-up comes up on the screen and asks a user or says to a user, your system has been locked, and in order to unlock it, you have to send us a specific amount of money. Then they have to call a number on the screen and provide a credit card number. A lot of people are held hostage by this type of malware that they encounter in their emails and unknowingly click on these kind of links. Physical security is the beginning fundamental component to providing good security for your information technology equipment and begins by what you physically do to prevent access to your systems. There are a number of tips that you can use and best practices for physical security, beginning with the BIOS system. There are a number of settings within the BIOS you can adjust to provide physical security, including the drive lock password, which has a user password and a master password. The password is used by the user when they want to access the system, and then a master password is used to reset if the user forgets their original password. You can set up the power on password in the CMOS to limit who can access the system. And then most systems have an intrusion detection feature that can be enabled through the BIOS to notify you if the cover is taken off equipment. This is handy to know if someone has attempted to take off the cover or remove any kind of internal components. And finally, the Trusted Platform module. The TPM chip on a computer is used to store cryptography keys, which are used to encrypt data. The TPM chip can be used to authenticate a device with a unique key that identifies the chip or the hardware. Most computers today have a TPM chip to encrypt the contents of the drive. Some of the best practices you want to include are secure server placement. In secure server placement, you lock servers in a secure room and only select a few individuals who actually have access to the room. Locking workstations is also important. You want to lock your workstations when you leave a system. Always ensure you lock the workstation so it can only be unlocked by the user with their authentication means or by the network administrator. Disabling devices can also be accomplished by disabling their ability to be booted from a flash drive or a DVD drive, and this is set up in the CMOS system. You can also set up a BIOS password which prevents hackers from modifying your boot devices. Then you can look at disabling network ports. This prevents hackers from entering your workplace and plugging into a network and performing network attacks. So you could disable a number of network ports or jacks on systems. It's also good to disable these as the system administrator from walls or other plug-in units within your system or in your work area. Cable lockdowns are also good to provide physical security to laptops, projectors, or other information technology equipment to secure it to where it can't be removed to something such as a desk or a table. Authentication is the process of proving your identity to a network. It generally involves using a username and a password on the system before you're granted access. There are many types of authentication which can be used. Authentication is the next step in security after physically securing the environment. Let's review some of these now. An RFID badge uses radio frequency to submit authentication information to an RFID access point. Many times these are keycard entry points into a room. A one-time password is a token device, sometimes called a key fob, used by a user, which generates a random number that they have to use in addition to their normal password. ID badges are required in all high security environments for employees and contractors to identify who they are and where they may access. Some places use different color-coded IDs to identify areas where people can access based on the level of security required. Smart cards are cards that contain user access information that can be inserted into a card reader connected to a computer, and then a PIN or a personal identification number is entered to provide access. And single sign-on is a common authentication used today where you can log in with a username and a password, and then you're given access to all the files and printers and services on a computer instead of logging into each different type of resource. This brings us to passwords. It's very important to utilize strong passwords which have a minimum of 8 characters. Many businesses are very specific and want 15 or more characters. Customers as well as yourself need to include a mix of lowercase and uppercase characters as well as numbers and special characters. Make sure you don't use simple terms that are easy to guess like password 123 or Johnny's login or the name of your favorite sports team. Complex passwords are much harder to guess and much more difficult for hackers to crack using a password cracker. So you want to use a password that looks more like the one shown here that begins with a hashtag versus the second one showing mypassword1. Multi-factor authentication uses different techniques to authenticate an environment. These are commonly something you know, something you have, or something you are. In something you know, you input an item into an access point, such as a PIN or a password. In something you have, you actually authenticate with a physical object in your possession, such as a smart card or a key fob. And something you are uses authentication means such as your personal voice, a retinal scan, a facial scan, a fingerprint, or some other type of biometric device. The important thing to remember as an A+ certified professional is that you want a highly secure environment, and to do that you need to use multiple authentication techniques to add more layers of protection. Data protection is important because you want to prevent access from hackers, but you also want to protect system users from damaging information on a network without meaning to do so. Each office should have policies in place to help secure information which is confidential. Shredding paper documents and confidential information is important, as well as storing documents in locked cabinets when no one is around. You and your customers should have specific mechanisms to destroy data on computers, hard drives, flash drives, DVDs, and other kind of information that's important for data but needs destruction. So always remember to protect it. When you don't need it, make sure it's destroyed. When you're looking to replace a system or recycle or donate it, it's important that you erase all of the data from the information contained on the drive. You need to make sure that a drive is actually erased. Some people think that simply by formatting a drive that erases all the data, and that's not correct. Erasing the data from a drive is called sanitizing. If you simply overwrite it, many hackers have forensic tools they can use to review the deleted data or pull it back up. So you have to make sure you use a drive wiping program known as a shredding application, which actually overwrites the contents of the sectors of the drive to ensure no data exist. Many people use what's called Secure Wipe, and it's available from Forensics Acquisition Utilities, and it can overwrite and sanitize a drive. You simply follow all of the commands to securely erase the drive. This allows you to be sure the program overwrites the context, and it actually rewrites the contents 3 times to make sure that it's complete. Hard drive destruction can be used in highly secure environments when you don't want to have the risk that all the contacts were actually removed from the drive as you expected. So there are many ways to perform a hard drive destruction, and here are a few of these. You can actually get a certificate of destruction, and that's where a destruction company actually provides you with documentation that the media storage device was destroyed. You can use incineration, which is used sometimes to physically destroy hard drives by using burn methods. Although that's not exactly environmentally desirable, it's done in some areas. A degaussing tool can be used which magnetically randomizes the data on a drive, keeping it from being readable. And then electromagnetics are sometimes used because the data that's stored on magnetic disks can be erased by very strong magnets. So you can use the magnet to corrupt the data of the drive to make it in an unreadable format. So those are some of the most popular means of data destruction. Sometimes disks are recycled or given to someone, but you want to make sure that you ensure that your data is not still on it when you're passing it over to someone else. You want to make sure it's been properly overwritten or degaussed. Data backups are important for securing your data because you may need it in the event of a disaster or disaster recovery or to restore information when it is lost. These are critical to your operation and should be backed up on a routine basis. When you perform a backup of operating systems, you want to keep track of the files that have changed since the last backup by setting an archive bit. This tells the system the file has been changed. You can perform either a full backup, a differential backup, or an incremental backup. Each of these is a bit different, so let me describe the three types. In a full backup, a backup is made of any files that you select, whether there is an archive bit set or not. This essentially records the fact that a file has been backed up. In a differential backup, copies are made of the files that have changed, but it doesn't always set an archive bit. That means that there's no record of the files that have been backed up. And finally, in an incremental backup, this type of backup makes copies. Any type of file that was changed and then the archive bit cleared, these files are backed up. In this type of backup, the backup file will not be backed up during the subsequent or incremental backups unless the file changes are made. So this slide shows some of the prevention methods that you can use in security to prevent loss of information. These are a combination of physical and authentication means. We talked about many different types of physical security, such as physical locks on a computer and access controls to a room. We also discussed multi-factor authentication, which is the best because it provides something from a person as something they are, something they have, or something they know. It's also important to provide directory permissions so that not everyone can have access to directories. You can control the directory permissions and access control list as well. Access control lists prevent access to specific computer rooms. In order to prevent data loss, you want to make sure that you've got antivirus software and that you use data that comes from trusted software manufacturers. To prevent worm types, you want to make sure that you've got a malware installed on your computer and that you use firewalls. And finally, as a technician or an administrator, you can support port disabling so there's limited access to device ports or ports that devices are connected to. Additional security controls that you deploy involve creating accounts and computer management. User account control allows for minimizing and controlling the span of control for people that have access to a computer or network. These include the administrator, any type of guest, and users of the system. The administrator account has full access to the system and can manage all aspects of the account. Guest accounts are authenticated as a guest and they inherit permissions you set for a guest. Typically, these are disabled from accessing a number of activities and files on a computer. As you set up controls, you want to develop access controls which contain a username, the full name, the description of the account user, then what type of password you want them to use. You also want to ensure or confirm that they are using the password and that they can change it frequently. You can create user accounts within the control panel, which we'll show you in a video activity at a later time. User accounts are populated with the basic data information that you need for a general user, and you can also develop group accounts for a collection of user accounts. That way you don't need to assign the same permission for multiple groups. You can set up multiple user groups, including administrators, backup operators, printer operators, and general users. So permissions are actually different than a right. A right governs an action that can be performed on a computer, but a permission is a user's access to a resource. You may, for example, give a user only read-only permission, or you might allow them to have read or modify. You can also give them full control to do all of these. Once you have set up folders and files and configuration rights for your users, you want to enable auditing. Auditing notifies you when things happen on a system, such as someone fails to log on or fails to use the correct username or password. You want to review this audit log on occasion for indications to any security-related issues. Reviewing the security log identifies these types of events. Firewalls are software or hardware that are designed to stop information from reaching your system unless you have allowed it to pass. The information that a firewall blocks is sent in the form of network packets from data that is broken down into a header, a body, or a trailer. The firewall is designed to look at these contents of the package and decide whether it should be allowed to enter the system or discarded. The firewall uses the source and the destination IP addresses from the header, as well as a port number to make this decision. Firewalls can be activated through the system in the security apps in the control panel. System hardening allows you to implement many of the best security practices. It does just that. It allows you to harden the system to make it difficult for any type of negative impact to occur. Hackers often compromise systems by using software installed and running it on the system. One easy way you can secure your system is to remove any software you're not using and disabling any Windows services that aren't necessary. To begin our discussion on hardening, remember the BitLocker from the earlier chapter. This allows you to lock the entire disk. Make sure that you utilize the BitLocker to prohibit drive access. Next, you want to make sure that you have used firewalls and turned on all the protective features on your system to prevent network attacks. After you have the firewall on, you want to make sure you always perform any kind of patch installations, especially when you're performing maintenance on a system. Use the patches that are frequently sent from the manufacturers and developers to update a system. Make sure that you have the appropriate password policies in place for strong passwords and encourage your clients and customers to use them. And then you want to enable auditing on your systems. That way you'll know if any kind of system has been compromised. Always enable the account management. You want to utilize EFS for encrypted file systems. You want to be sure that you encrypt files when you send them. You can right-click on any kind of file, choose Properties on the Advanced button, and then select to encrypt the contents by selecting the checkbox. So if you've got to send anything back and forth, you have a mechanism to do that. And finally, we want to talk about securing connections, especially wireless connections. You want to make sure your router has a password and you set up the service set identifier or the SSID to your wireless network. And don't identify the network to your home or work area. I find this very common in my neighborhood where people develop funny names for their network, but sometimes hackers are able to identify the house which it comes from. Like my neighbor, it says Oxford Network, or the next one says James Network, so it's pretty obvious which one of those houses it comes from. After you set the SSID, you want to disable the SSID broadcasting. The wireless router broadcasts an SSID so anyone who gets close to the network knows whose network it is. It's kind of like if you're at McDonald's and you're on a cellular phone. It'll identify all the Wi-Fi in that area. It'll say McDonald's access or Jim's iPhone or things like that. So you can turn off that broadcasting so it's not there. That's one other additional way you can secure your system. It's just one other addition of added layer of security. This video demonstration covers the security fundamentals. Security is a big aspect of what we do as CompTIA A+ certified professionals. We want to provide security in advance of something happening to a computer, but also we want to be able to provide the best resources if a computer is already infected, and a lot of times we'll see both ways. So when we were in our lecture, we talked about a number of different types of attacks like denial of service and eavesdropping, and then social engineering. So in social engineering, somebody impersonates an IT administrator or another user, or they may be a hacker that sends an email that has a malicious virus either attached to it where somebody clicks on a link or some type of malware like that. And there were a number of different types of attacks of viruses. We talked about like buffer overflows, SQL injections, and then we talked about logic bombs and worm viruses and ransomware. So we're going to encounter a number of different things as far as security protection. I'd like to encourage you, once you've completed the CompTIA A+ certification, you seek out further certification in the IT world, like the Certified Information Systems Security Professional or the Ethical Hackers, because I think you'll find it to be a fascinating piece of what we do as far as computers. Wanted to show you some of the Microsoft programs like Windows Defender, so I'm going to go ahead and put this on the screen so you'll be able to look at it and have a little bit more discussion here about the prevention and then backups. So we've talked about backups in a couple of different contexts. You want to make sure that a computer is properly backed up, and you might need to go to a restoration point once something actually is infected with a virus. Another, some of the main things you want to do as far as prevention is, start with that backup, but you also want to work on physical security and then authentication. Those are important. There's another couple of things that you can do, like setting up your user account controls and your permissions. So both of those are important. I want to show you the user account controls. And user account controls are important because you can actually be notified when someone tries to make a change to a Windows setting. And that's pretty good because it gives you a pop-up and lets you know that somebody tried to do something that wouldn't exactly be something that you would have desired on a computer. And you can also set your permissions. Takes you to the same place. Sets the permissions who can access that. So if you hear user account controls or permissions used, that's what it's talking about. Really making sure that you're notified if any kind of change is made to your computer. So when we talk about Windows, there's a couple of different things you can look at in Windows security. that'll show you about your device security. You can have core isolation, and it protects the running core parts of your devices. You can set up secure boot to prevent malicious software, and all these activities are commonly turned on in your system. When we're looking at Windows Defender, this one happens to be managed right now by Norton Security, and I'll talk a little bit about some of the different brands and some of the prevention mechanisms you can use. But the important thing is when you look at your Windows firewall, you want to make sure that it's on. So you're looking for a lot of green check marks unless you have specific things that are managed by an outside vendor software. But one thing you look at here, we've got inbound and outbound rules. So I just want to show you how many rules are built into this firewall system. When we scroll through here, each and every one of these has a specific rule that the firewall has to ascertain is correct. Those are for anything that comes in, and this is for anything that goes out. And I'll see if I can get one here. You can disable them or enable them. I like to look at some of the properties there. It'll basically tell you some of the rules or things that can or can't be modified, but you can turn off the connection or you can allow the connection. The important thing is when you're looking at your actual firewall is that things are being monitored, and you can tell by each one of these sections exactly what's going on. See if we can look at the active firewall rules. Sorry, nothing's shown there. All right, back to this key part. But the main thing is you want to be able to make sure that you've got an adequate firewall in place. I want to talk about a couple of things unrelated to Microsoft. When you're downloading antivirus software, you want to make sure that your customers have some type of antivirus software. A lot of the common ones are like McAfee and Norton. You've got some of the basic programs here under Microsoft, but I always advise customers to get something that's a little bit of a step up. So you do have a company here called Avast that's commonly used. You want to make sure that you go to the actual company and make sure that you download it on their website versus getting that from an ad company. And the only reason I say that is sometimes the companies that are actually posting an ad and posting you through their website first before you get to theirs, one thing, they're there to make their own profit, but sometimes you can have some specific type of malware actually coming from their website. So I always make sure that I go down to the actual company's website and download it there. Microsoft's got a couple of different things. They've got a malicious software removal tool if you actually get something on a computer, so you can download that from Microsoft. That's available on their website. I always check the web address to make sure that it's the actual company and not some hyphenated name or anything odd in there. Anyway, so you've got some other companies like AVG. I know some people that use that, and I myself have been using Norton. I don't have a preference. I've worked with a lot of large companies that use McAfee and Norton. It's just a matter of personal preference for what you want to use. As I mentioned, you want to be careful where you get your specific software from. So if you're using virus protection, use something that's noteworthy and reputable, and then make sure that the link where you're getting it from is actually from the company's website. There are a number of things you can look at as far as diagnostic reports and look, but what I've got shown here is AVG. It's a virus scanner and malware removal tool. So once you've got to that point, I showed you the Microsoft one too. You're a little past the point of no return. That's not exactly where you want to be, but a lot of times customers will bring computers in that are already infected with viruses. So you'll be responsible for having your own tools available to remove that software. So I recommend either one of the Microsoft programs and then a number of the other virus scanners. So this happens to be a free one through AVG that you can use. It scans computers and you can download it for free and is recommended by quite a few IT professional companies. Another one of the commercial antivirus software protection programs and just show you how it works. because it's really important when we talk about prevention. So you want to make sure that you can prevent or provide a virus scanner software either through one of the free manufacturers or some of the Windows Defender type. But you want to have good layers of security. Then you always want to make sure your customers have a backup. That's key. And make sure that they're using physical security controls. So explain those to them. I usually hand out a basic physical security sheet which talks about strong passwords and making sure that you keep your computer locked and in a secure place and things like that. And then you can also, as I mentioned, set up the user account controls and your permissions. On top of that, it's just really managing simply your firewall. So this is a Norton security program. I have the ability to scan a program. I can do a quick scan or a deep full scan, and I can look at any number of different reports. So I'm going to go to this diagnostic report. It's checking simply all my information. It's going to develop a report for anything that is looked at recently or in the past for my computer system. So this takes just about a minute or two, and it basically scans what's going on there. One thing that I'd like to say is that you notice this makes me a little nervous here. I've got 32 days until this expires, so I always keep an eye on that. I've got a tracker for my different customers on hand of when their antivirus software expires, if I've helped them purchase it, or I usually pull up and find out what the expiration date is for their specific software, and I keep that on file. I think that's just a handy thing, and it's a way that you can reach out to customers for additional business and send them a simple reminder saying, hey, I noticed your virus scan software is due for renewal. Would you like me to assist you with that? So I've got a couple of things on the diagnostic report. It tells me about my basic security and the operating systems, and everything looks like it's good to go. It's detected a startup item that I may not have reviewed, so I can improve my performance by running the startup manager to turn off any additional delays. So it's got a lot of things I can use to speed up my computer system, and a couple of other things that are helpful. I like to look at the history because I can tell exactly what's happened on my computer, and I can tell if I've had any type of an attack or any kind of an event. So there's many things you'll encounter normally, like pop-up blockers and things like that. So this happened recently at night. My firewall rules were updated. I accessed a number of programs or different places. Allowed Skype to access my network. Got some different things where it's detected different IP address connections. I use some Windows search protocols, things like that. So it keeps pretty good information of what happened and whether it's good or bad. It gives me the severity. Try to see if I can scroll down here and find anything that's got a bad severity. Usually it's color coded. Don't see anything there. Talks about some of the different activities. So firewall updates tells me things when the CPU is used a lot. Sometimes different types of viruses will put really a drain on a system or pull a lot of power from it. So there's different ways to tell exactly what's going on there. Tells about some of the detections and captures and tells some of the time. So very handy user things for me, so I can know exactly what's going on with my computer. This is simple on off. I've got a smart firewall here, intrusion prevention, so I can click this and turn this off. Gives me a notification right away that says basically, hey, your protection is off. How long do you want to do this for? 10, 15 minutes, things like that. So I'm going to cancel that and leave that on. But a lot of different protections that are on there. I've got a report card up here, and I like to look at that periodically. It just tells me how many different files I've scanned. So here I've scanned basically 2 million files. I've had 17 separate wireless hotspots that I worked on. I've done file cleanup for 18,000 files. I've analyzed 48 different downloads, and it's really helped me to clean up and optimize my computer with about 3 gig of space that it made there. So you're basically going to be providing information for your customers on to make the best decision to prevent viruses and malware. Other things you have to do as a CompTIA certified professional is you want to make sure that you've identified a lot of the malware symptoms. You have to be able to tell and notice if a system is infected, and things like that might be where it's running really slow, or you notice a lot of pop-ups on the screen, and that could be a sign to you that you have an infected system. Once you've done that, you want to quarantine the system. So if you've got some of these virus protection programs or removers, it'll allow you to quarantine it. And also what you want to do is be able to disable your system restore. If you do that, you can actually identify where the system was restored, and you don't want it to be connecting back to the network to the same point it was where the virus was. So that's another thing you can do. You definitely want to remediate it, whatever you have to do to get some kind of a virus and removal to take that off of there. So the common basic rules that you always want to provide your customers, you want to make sure that you schedule and you scan a system update, whether you set it up yourself or whether you're setting it up for them. So it's run standard every night or every hour or how often you want it to run, depending on what you're doing. If you do a lot of gaming or internet searches, you may want that increased. If you're just doing your basic documents on a file, that's a little bit different. Then you want to create a restore point, some kind of a backup. So you've got it for your customers, and you can do that whenever they bring it in for a visit for you. You can set it up automatically or show them how to put it on a separate external drive, but that's important. But the main thing is education of the user to make sure they know what to do when they have a virus, or be able to tell if they have one, and make sure that they're protected in advance. And that's kind of what our job is to do there, is to help them with the system hardening. This video demonstration will cover security issues and how to troubleshoot or identify some of the common causes. Sometimes as a CompTIA professional, you'll be required to determine exactly what occurred to a computer with a security incident, and sometimes this will take some troubleshooting. You may need to remove malware or a virus, or identify problems based on the symptoms, and basically try to determine what possibly could have occurred. Any number of random things could happen, such as the computer locking up or random reboots or things like that. So some of the most common ways to know that a computer is affected by malware or a virus is evidenced by random pop-up ads. Random pop-up ads you'll find just coming up through websites and things like that. They'll just randomly generate and have generally odd topics in some of the pop-up ads. Then you might find situations where virus software is automatically disabled. That's usually a sign that it's been hijacked and you've got some kind of a malware or virus. You might have issues with web browsers being redirected, where you click on google.com or microsoft.com and it sends you to something totally different, like a Toyota website or some other random website. So it just depends on what the website is that the hijacker is trying to send you to. So it could send you to something that's ridiculous or something you may not even want to see on a computer screen. So browser hijacking is pretty common. You might see some kind of programs that just automatically launch, like a program that wasn't on the computer before, or that your customer identifies, hey, I never had that software on there, but it keeps launching this particular program. That's a sign there. And you may have a slow acting computer, maybe very slow, and you need to look at your performance monitor and determine some kind of constraints there. You may also see significantly larger bandwidth usage, and that's usually an indicator too that you might have a virus or some kind of malware. You might have seen even in the news. I'll go to just some of the news there. Here's some random ransomware attacks. So those are pretty common, where people click through an email or something that's sent to them. There's a link from somebody they don't know, and once they've clicked on this specific email, it downloads some software that basically locks their computer, and they can't use it again until they pay this ransom, which sometimes when it's been identified in the news. I know they had a story about a hospital recently that you can see several different types of things here. But anyway, the hospital had this on their system, and the hijackers actually wanted several hundreds of thousands of dollars to have that removed, or to give them the keys to remove the ransomware. So it can be significant, and you've got to make sure that your users or your customers already have some kind of antivirus and malware protection on there. Sometimes with these websites that I mentioned will take them to a place that's really counterintuitive. So if they're on the website and you have them on the phone, say you're working a help desk, the best way to get out of those is usually to click Control-Alt-Delete and go to the task manager and actually get out of the website, because some of the websites will actually trick you to where it says, do you want to continue, when you really don't. So it's actually built that way, so it's counterintuitive, and it's causing you to actually load the virus versus getting out of it. So the best thing to use is the task manager, and recommend that, or if you're on a help desk, have the customers use that. Some things you might see as well are emails from people's email accounts that have been hijacked, and they'll send an email to everyone in their mail contacts, and it'll be some kind of ridiculous email or a link that says click on XYZ here, and you'll see that for just drug companies and things like that, or random things that you wouldn't probably purchase. So if all of a sudden 5 or 6 people contact a user or contact you and say, I got a random email from you that has this topic in it, and they all say they got the same email, and you know you didn't send it, or your customer didn't send it, that's usually some kind of indication of a hijacking. So let's start with some of the issues related to malware removal. There's a number of different websites and programs you can use, such as Total AV. So I'll run you through a few of these. We've got a Virus Total, and this can actually go through and look at some suspicious files and things like that to get those scanned. You've got Norton Antivirus. This is well known and relatively inexpensive. You've got Security Solutions. This is McAfee. So Norton and McAfee are probably your two specifically largest ones. You've got a number of different paid and unpaid. Here's a free one that's from AVG that is recommended by PC Magazine, and I've heard of some people using that. That's not too bad. And Avast. So that's free antivirus protection. But you know, it's like anything in life, you kind of get what you pay for. These are good for free, but you can always get a better, more higher level of security through some of the paid subscriptions. So you've got a few there. You've got Norton by Symantec, McAfee, PC Protect, AVG, and Avast. And they all work a little bit differently, but can get things to go. So you can use cleaners to help you get back to where you need to be, but the best thing to do is really clean the drive off and go to a known good backup point. That's the best thing to do. You really want to delete all the files and then install a new operating system and reload your data from a backup. That's the best thing to do. When you're removing your malware, you have to remember, or your virus that's been on the computer, you want to disable your system restore point, because malware infects the system restore points. So to do that, you want to go to disabling the system protection. I want to let me go to restore. All right, and I'll go to my actual restore point. And let me drag this over here. You'll go to the configure point, and then you'll click delete, and that'll delete all the original restore points. It sounds kind of counterintuitive, because basically you think you want to go back to a restored point, but the people that design malware are pretty savvy. What they do is they actually, the malware will attach onto your pre-existing restore points. So before you start to work on or remove that, you want to delete your actual system restore points that are on there. Sounds kind of intuitive, but that's easy to do. So you want to delete your restore point. Then you want to load your antivirus. So whether you've picked the Avast there, or the McAfee, or Norton, or any of these other companies, you want to load your antivirus software and make sure it's on there. Sometimes the malware is specifically set up to prevent you trying to download some antivirus. So you may have to work with a couple of different applications to get that on there. You may actually have to load the files on another computer or something and save those on an external hard drive and get those loaded onto the computer, because it may not let you download antivirus, but you can probably load it off of some kind of a disk or an external drive. So when you're done, you want to go back to your restore point and actually activate it again. So make sure your system protection is turned on, and you want to set up a new restore point. That's important, because you want to have a place that you can go back to for later on when other things happen unrelated to virusware or things like that. So some things you can talk to your customers about. Make sure they look for trusted sites, ones that are secured with HTTPS, got a secured protocol, You can see a lock over here, and where the actual hyperlink is green. That lets you know it's good to go. You want to use security trusted websites and go to websites that are really trusted and people know where they're at. So make sure you advise them to only go to sites they know about. Then you want to make sure you've got the latest in as far as browser versions, because they're loaded with the newest security patches. Depends on what you use. So here's Microsoft Explorer, which I've got simply just going to Google. So you've got your regular Explorer. You've got Microsoft Edge, which looks like this. Each of these you want to make sure if they've got any options to download the latest version, that you do that. You've got Mozilla, which looks like this. It's a different type of browsing that a lot of people use if they do some programming languages like that. It seems to hang a little bit less. And your Google Chrome. So your Google Chrome is a good website to use, but make sure you've got the latest version of this loaded up, because that has the latest security patches in there. But like I mentioned, the best thing to do if you want to make sure you get rid of a virus or a malware is delete everything off of it and go to a good known backup. Recommend to your customers some name brand software and make sure that it's configured to run automatically and update. So if they've got virusware, it needs to be something that's not set up to run at random points or they have to click on it to run. Make sure it's set up automatically. Remind them never to download any kind of files from untrusted sources or definitely unknown emails, and avoid visiting any kind of suspicious websites. So you're also a consultant at this point to giving them some tips to preventing this in the future and having any kind of unwanted applications. So I appreciate you joining me for this video demonstration on some of our security principles and how to work on the restore points if you've got to remove some viruses or malware type of softwares.